again, Squawk Box is it's a professional tool. It's a unique tool. It helps you as a mini trader. It helps you understand and know how prices develop, what the key factors are. It helps you understand exactly who the players are at any given point, and it helps you determine that information as you listen long enough, and it helps you predict things that are kind of setting themselves up and predict information as it's about to happen. It's not some random circumstantial type or information that is just pulled out of the air. It's random in nature in that there's really no predicting as the information comes to the pit, but as the information does develop, it's very predictable in nature in that there's certain things that occur on a regular basis. Again, kind of along the lines of the old saying that history tends to repeat itself. Know history or be it. This is very important. The market has a very predictable type nature which can be acted upon, but you need to have enough information to understand that this is a critical setup, or this is a setup that's following a very set circumstances or a very set development that's occurred in the past. It's not enough to just have one or two of those indicators. It's not enough to just have the market setting up in one or two situations. Sometimes you need to have three or four which are contributing to that development and contributing to that price activity that's happening before you. And it's really important to understand that the trader's knowledge of how the market's moving and the trader's knowledge of the pit activity is what is essential in developing or establishing that trade decision. The interpretation of that in development is something that only pit traders used to have, and this interpretation of that development is definitely conceived and brought about by traders and how they interpret the information. And this was one of the things that pit traders used to have in terms of an advantage. But the ability that this advantage is the ability that the Squawk gives traders, this advantage now becomes the screen trader's advantage, above and beyond the local's advantage. And we always joke and say that we're your eyes and ears in the pit, and so you have the advantage of knowing what's happening in the pit without having to do all the pushing and shoving yourself. You actually, in some ways, are at more advantage now than the pit traders, because you have the ability to focus on the screen, to focus on your trade platform, and watch many, many other indicators that just aren't available to pit traders that are standing in the pit because of the pushing and shoving and the screaming and yelling that they have to do. So you as a Squawk listener actually have the best of both worlds in many ways. You have the factual commentary, the to-the-minute, to-the-second information that's coming out of the pit, and you also have that upper hand ability or the other contributing factors that allow you to look at the screen and some of the other information avenues, or some of the information that's distributed out there, and you can now interpret that information combined with the audio to make that better trading educated decision. One of the things that the listeners of Squawk Box like to hear is the activity of the locals, and one of the reasons why I think this is definitely true is that pit traders don't play games when they're in the pit. One of the things that one of the rules, there's a couple, or there's a top 10 set of rules that I've seen before for pit traders. Is that you don't trade just to trade, okay? And many of the traders will tell you in the pit that one of the hardest things to do is to avoid trading, because there's so much energy in the pit, and you see so many people accumulating position and getting out of position that you need to understand that you're getting in based on intuition and instinct and experience. It's very similar to the person who got me involved in the business years and years and years ago. Used to be a major horse bettor or handicapper, I guess they'd be called, at the horse track, and he used to talk about how he needs to discipline himself, and the way that he's a profitable handicapper is the ability to go to the track and see and wait for a good situation to develop. In other words, seeing a horse that's going to win and yet seeing odds that are making it where it's a good bet for him to play. If the odds aren't there, even though he sees the horse that's going to win, if the odds aren't there in his favor, then he's going to have to lay off the bet. And in that case, he needs to be able to he needs to be willing to go to the track but not make a bet. He needs to be able to walk away from the track having not placed any bets at all in that day, knowing that if he's patient, the situation that we just discussed, the couple key factors that need to be present in order for him to make that trade or that bet, those are going to develop at a certain time. You know, I like to think of it as, I was talking to somebody on the phone today about this. It's very similar to when you're in Las Vegas or a gambling type town. You have the tourists and you have the locals, okay? And the locals are the actual professional gamblers. And at a poker table, for example, those locals go to the poker table and they know that they have time on their side. The tourists, on the other hand, tend to go to the poker table, and this is one of my favorite tables to be at. They tend to go to the poker table, and every once in a while you'll see a tourist betting because he's got to get on an airplane very soon. So he tends to kind of go out on a limb or place bets that he wouldn't necessarily play because he's got chips in his hand and he's either got to go meet his wife for dinner or, like I said, he's got an airplane that he's got to catch. And so, you know, he came to the casino, he came to the table knowing that there was a good chance he might lose some money, or he's scratch on the day and he's up a little bit on the day and he's kind of feeling like, hey, maybe I'm willing to risk a little bit more in a situation that I normally wouldn't risk. But the gamblers that are the true locals or the professional gamblers that are there, they're not placing those bets at all. And so they're actually looking for people who are placing those bets, similar to the way the locals in the pit watch paper flow as it comes through. Locals sit there basically and they let activity come to them. Very similar to a car dealer in the scenario that I've talked about before in terms of the car dealer. They're sitting there, it's their profession to buy and sell cars. They don't need to buy and sell cars or go to they don't walk around to the other dealers to try and accumulate cars or to try and unload cars. They are patient and they sit back on the lot and they wait for buyers and sellers to come to them. That's the same situation how the locals are, and it's also very similar to how some professional gamblers are. They know that if they patiently wait for those opportunities to present themselves and then jump on them and take advantage of them as they do present themselves, those are going to be the most profitable situations for them. It's when they go out and start looking for the other and creating and trying to make a bet that the situation develops against them most often. And those are the times when trading is least profitable, when you're forcing development and forcing market activity. The traders in the pit actually have the same information as the listener of the Squawk has and the same information that the Squawk broadcaster has. So this is one of the reasons, again, why these traders are successful is that they have this first-hand knowledge. They'll be able to act on development as it occurs instead of waiting for information to develop and waiting for information to come to them. These traders see it happening, and so they can act on it accordingly, similar to how a Squawk Box listener hears the action developing and they can act on it accordingly. If you're sitting back with all kinds of doubt and all kinds of questions in your mind in terms of what you're hearing or what you're seeing, that's going to kind of weigh things down, and that's going to slow your decision-making process because your mind is focused on those questions and on that doubt versus having the confidence and acting on things as they happen, and the rest becomes second nature. The information that you're interpreting and the information that the Squawk broadcaster is providing you really does become second nature in many aspects, and that you tend to sort of eliminate or let sort of in one ear out the other ear, if you will, some of the things that aren't necessarily applicable to your situation or applicable to the trade development that you're watching. But Squawk puts you where every trader wants to be, basically in the pit. When Squawk Box, for example, wasn't even available, the broker would have to answer all kinds of questions and the phone clerk would have to answer all kinds of questions in terms of what was actually developing in the pit. Now this is streaming and this is available to you to the second, every minute with zero delay, in a factual format, so you can base your trading decisions upon some of the information that you've been receiving.